Hey, congratulations for another successful documentary.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really, really excited about it.
You know what? I've immediately checked out, and I was so I don't want to say disappointed, but I was just disappointed that there was only two episodes that I
Yeah, right. Yeah, in the world of binge television, HBO and Showtime still curate their programming to kind of keep you hooked coming out. So, but you can watch. You have HBO Max. You can watch it today. It's going to be coming out early today instead of Sunday. So.
that is terrific. So how did it feel for you that this was part of the HBO documentary series?
Oh man, I mean, it was an extraordinary blessing, really, to work with the whole team over there. I mean, those guys are known for a special kind of programming and telling special kind of stories, and the fact that they were so into this from the start and gave us all of the support that we needed to really tell this story in a full-bodied way is something that any producer would ever ask for. And so I think that the fact that we have this opportunity with Liz Carmichael and The Lady and the Dale, it just is a kind of icing on top.
Well, let's walk back here. What actually sparked you to do the documentary Lady and the Dale? I mean, what actually triggered all this? What it just randomly came across your desk?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So, as a producer, anytime one of my projects gets released or ends up in the trades or my name gets floated around, I always get a lot of inquiries for new projects. Sometimes those come from agents and managers, but a lot of them just come from random people. And this was one of those projects. It was the first and only, to this day, unsolicited project inquiry that I've ever responded to. And it actually came to my producing partner, Alan Bain, first. And Nick Cammilleri, the director, one of the co-directors, the other co-director is Zackary Drucker, actually had been working on this thing for, I don't know, probably 7 years or so before it finally showed up at my doorstep. And so we sat down, Alan and I, with Nick, and really worked on it for about a year and a half before bringing it to Mark and Jay Duplass. And everybody knows them, and they've got this huge track record and a lot of fans for the quirky and kind of unusual take on a lot of different stories. And so they really were the perfect partner for this project. And they bit down on it right away, and HBO did the same thing. So that was kind of the track. But it's an interesting story because it came from a first-time filmmaker, and is really proof positive that if you stick with something long enough, it will find a home, and it will eventually come to fruition.
I'm surprised about the partnership with the Duplass brothers because they're very known for like indie films, not on the documentary side.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they kind of like secretly won an Emmy for this fantastic documentary series called Wild Wild Country that was on Netflix. And that series was being talked about a lot at the time, and it was their first foray into documentary space, and it was something that they kind of learned, and they knocked it out of the park with this project, which I love and always had. And then Jay Duplass, as an actor, starred in Transparent on Amazon, and that was starring Jeffrey Tambor as a trans woman, and really the drama that ensued with his family to try to cope with the transition that he was going through. And so there was already a connection. And then Zackary Drucker, the co-director, actually was one of the producers on Transparent with Jay Duplass. So there was already a lot of connection or connective tissue that existed there in the Duplass ecosphere that we felt they would really, really love this. And they did. We jumped kind of right into it together, and HBO bought it within weeks.
Now, before you started this project, have you heard of Carmichael before? I mean, I mean, like for myself, I've been around. I mean, I was born in the '70s, but
Yeah.
never heard of this until I watched this documentary. And after I watched this documentary, I thought to myself, like, no, this has to be fictionalized. Until I actually Googled it.
Oh man.
It's true.
Yeah, no, you and me both. I swear when we first, to answer your question, no, I had never heard of Liz Carmichael before she showed up on my doorstep, and before Nick Cammilleri showed up on my doorstep. And it's so crazy that you do think that it's fiction, because when we first started this, Nick forewarned us that you're not going to find a lot Googling her. You're not going to find there's no book out there. There's no miniature documentary or short film. There's nothing out there really about this story. There's a couple of tidbits here and there that you might have come across in automotive magazines or in like a Mythbusters type project or something along those lines, but nothing comprehensive in any way, shape, or form. And so Nick, but for the fact that he had been working on this project for 8 years before he brought it to me and validated it, we would have thought it was fiction. And I remember when we talked with Mark and Jay about it, they felt the same way. They're like, wow, is this really real? And so, yeah, it's like this actually happened, and we have the Price is Right footage to, prove it. And we've got the Unsolved Mysteries footage to prove it. And we've got all of these different things, and this actually happened. And that's the beauty of documentaries. I've been a investor and producer of documentaries for a long time, kind of long before it's had its renaissance. And the great thing about docs, in my experience, I mostly make narrative films, but the docs that I have made, in my experience, really are stranger than fiction. And having the opportunity to tell those stories kind of grounded in the reality that they exist is really, really a godsend. And so with Lady and the Dale, it was one of those rare stories that was huge at one point in time, and you just never heard of it.
I'm actually amazed to your timing of everything, because just watching the first couple episodes of your documentary, I was like going, gosh, if I didn't know better, Elon Musk could have been like the reincarnated version of Liz Carmichael in the auto business
Absolutely.
quite easily, since he's even moving his factory to Texas.
Yeah, right. He's moving his factory to Texas. That's what she ended up doing. And yeah, she really is like the foremost predecessor, I think, to the Tesla and Elon Musk and that kind of thing. There were a lot of independent car makers back in the day, and really even now, independent car makers. The Tesla is one of thousands that actually managed to break through to a consumer market, but the vast majority of them actually get bought and destroyed or get brought to their knees, like the Dale, and never make it to market. But I think the personality piece of it has a lot of consistencies as well with Elon Musk. He's a brash, bold money man, and yeah, eccentric. And there's actually a video I think one of the producers found on Twitter of Elon Musk doing the same thing that Liz Carmichael did to show the integrity of the car, actually shooting a gun at the car to say that it was impenetrable by a bullet, and it not working as well. Saying it so many times, he just ended up believing it. So there's a lot of connectivity there between Liz Carmichael's story and Tesla, for sure.
So it sounded like a lot of legwork of research was already done through the pitch. Did you guys have to do additional research since there was so little about Liz Carmichael? Because it seemed like the only people who actually had research on it was the FBI, and they weren't going to ready to hand that over to you.
Yeah, so it's funny you bring them up because the research that Nick Cammilleri did for the 7 or 8 year process that he had been working on this before it showed up to me and Alan was just the tip of the iceberg, surprisingly. That when we really had the money and the facilities to really dig deep into this, we took all of that work that Nick had done, which was extraordinary, and we were able to pinpoint names, places, times that were in court documents, that were in criminal documents, that were in FBI documents, and say, let's track this person down. Or is this person still alive? Are they willing to talk if they are still alive? Because this was a traumatic event for a lot of people, and so a lot of them just kind of retreated and never wanted to discuss it again. But a lot of them did, thankfully. And so, thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, we were able to get boxes and boxes of documents for Liz Carmichael's life and everything that they have on her and her experiences. So the research was vast. I mean, we had an extraordinary research team that really helped build this thing out, and really without them and without Nick's encyclopedic knowledge, it really would not be the show that you see now.
So how did it came about that you guys decided to create it as a 4-part documentary? Because I think this is like your first series as a documentary, because most of your documentaries are just like
single docs.
Yeah, just single docs. So how did that came to that decision? Is it just because there was just so much wealth of information, or or did HBO wanted to stretch it out?
Yeah, so we walked into HBO with it as a 4-part series. So when Nick brought it to Alan and myself, he was thinking of it as a single documentary. And then once we got a chance to dig in and develop it and really build out a story and evaluate it, it was clear that it needed to be a series. It needed to be a multi-part series. There were just too many twists and turns. And even in 4 parts, we struggled to get we still didn't get everything in. I struggled to get everything in. We still didn't get everything in. We had to leave an enormous amount of content on the floor in order to tell the story that you see now. So when we went to HBO and we went to the Duplass team, it was as a series. They were in favor of it, and then HBO ultimately was in favor of it as well. And I think that that's a good solid number for being able to deliver and tell this story. We could have easily made it 8 parts, or 10 parts, but at some point you got to birth these babies. Can't have them, working on them for hundreds of years. You know what I mean? So this was a good cross section of this story and good representation of what this story really has to entail.
Well, I find your storytelling riveting. I mean, how did you manage to pull that off? Because you basically did it in 4 parts and managed to take it in story section by story section to keep us audiences, enthralled. That's something.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it's a puzzle. It's really part of the skill of a producer to identify stories that people would want. And for me, I just make movies and TV shows that I want to see, things that I would watch myself. And so that's sort of the barometer that I go off of. But the reality is that it was a hugely collaborative effort amongst our team. Our directors, Nick Cammilleri and Zackary Drucker, Mark and Jay Duplass, as executive producers, were hugely instrumental in this process. Their team, Mel Eslin and Elena Carruthers, that work for Duplass Brothers Productions, were fantastic with structure and how to kind of move these puzzle pieces around. And then just some natural instincts, from my producing partner, Alan Bain, and I, just being able to drill down on some of the essential elements of the story. And, you know, the finished product is the result of many, many revisions. You know, like a lot of people think it's like this sort of magically happens. Even in my own family, you know, don't totally understand what it is that I do, but there's a lot of trial and error in that process, but that's part of the creative process. And at the end of the day, when you get something you're really excited about, then you know you have something because you're excited about it and you've been living with it for a long time. And if you're excited about it and you've seen this thing a million times, then you know that the audience who's never heard of it is going to really, really love it. And we've been getting a lot of great reviews and a lot of great feedback and love from this project from day one.
You know, one of the things that I thought that was a terrific move was your photo collage animation.
Yeah,
Because that actually filled in the blanks, especially since, you know, I am sure there aren't enough videos out there to
that's right.
fill in those blanks. Could you talk about the decision-making process to go that route and how you guys pulled it off?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, really, you're right. There was a deficit of material, archival material as it relates to Liz. Obviously, she's her story and archival material are in there, but not enough for full coverage of a 4-part series, maybe for a single documentary. And then we had a lot of audio, which we ended up using in the documentary of her. And so we were trying to determine how to fill the gaps. And my company, Cinemation Studios, is actually how I started the company, was in animation and visual effects. On this project, we didn't provide the animation. That was done by a really, really gifted director named Sean Donnelly, and through his company. But I knew that as a lover of animation, that could work. That there were several under the radar examples of some really groundbreaking animation of other documentaries that some people hadn't heard of. And so there was a lot of educating the team. There was a lot of talking through some of those examples and looking at them, and then really just coming up with something unique. And when we came up with something unique, which was very organic in its process, we were all on the same page that, okay, this is something we haven't seen before. Like we really should utilize this as a motif and as a storytelling device throughout the series. And it's gotten nothing but great reactions. You know, we had a lot of fun with it, as you can tell. There's a lot of gags and things in there that we were able to drop in.
I'm curious, where did you get the photos to do your photo collages?
So we had a lot of photos of Liz Carmichael. We had a lot of photos from the family. We had photos of additional interview subjects out of the story. And then some of them we licensed just from our friends and family to make up some of the stand-ins and some of the background players and that kind of thing. And so yeah, there was sort of a myriad of different sources that we pulled from to ultimately put together this kind of, you know, cut and paste stop motion animation kind of feel that we have. And it really paid off. We're really pleased with it.
Well, I love it. I mean, it makes me feel like you should this should become a movie like this. But anyways,
yeah, right. Yeah, there's a life for it afterwards. You know, we haven't really seen it, and it has like a familiarity to it that because it's not so perfectly polished like a Pixar movie or something like that it has a comfort and familiarity to it that, you know, we did it by design, but at the same time it has a very organic feel, and it just matched the craziness and the strange, you know, story that we were dealing with really perfectly.
Now, your interview subjects, I'm actually surprised because if this story is so out there and so strange with so many left turns and right turns, How did you convince all these people to actually participate, to be interviewed for your documentary, or did they want to tell this story?
Some of them did and some of them didn't. It's just part of the documentary filmmaking process. I mean, that's what makes a documentary, are the interviews. That's how the story is told from one person to the next. That's how a story arc is actually created. And a lot of these figures, including ones that didn't make it into the series, are ones that we had to work on for a very, very long time. And a credit also to Nick Cammilleri for working on some of these people and being in touch, especially with the family, for a long, long time. And some of them didn't care it was on HBO. Big deal. Like, they don't want to tell the story, but they may have a story that's just so compelling. There's only one person that can tell it. And they were thankfully willing to eventually come around and actually tell that story. So it's a process. It's the same thing in a narrative film. You've got to really work on developing characters with your actors, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But the same thing applies in a documentary world, is that there's a little bit of journalism involved in it, where you got to chase these subjects down and convince them and as long as they're not hanging up the phone on you, and as long as they're not telling you to go to hell, and even in some cases, if they tell you to go to hell, you still keep pressing them until they just don't answer your phone call anymore. But luckily that didn't happen here, and we finally got them over the hump. And once one person does it, that gives, like, if you got one family member that does it, that gives the confidence to the next family member to do it. And if that person does it, then that gives the confidence to the next one to do it. And going down that daisy chain, or that those dominoes would kind of create a domino effect that would work in your favor eventually. But it is labor. It is labor for sure.
In one of the email pitches I saw, there was a photo of you in front of the Dale. Is that actually the Dale? Where did you find that?
Dale. Yeah, that's the Dale. So the Peterson Automotive Museum here in Los Angeles, there are 3 Dales that exist. There's one at the Peterson Automotive Museum, which is where those photos were taken in front of the Dale. There's another one at the Museum of American Speed, that's in Nebraska. Both of those are prototypes. And the only working Dale, which needs to be, has all the mechanical parts to work, but needs to be serviced in order to actually drive again, that exists with a private collector here in Los Angeles as well. And so all 3 of those are the 3 remaining Dales. And there was the shell of one more Dale that was blue in color that our archivist, a good friend of mine, Elizabeth Pepin Silva, actually was able to track down, and the director just bought it, was able to convince the guy to sell it to him just recently. And I think that existed in the Mojave Desert. But that was just a shell, didn't have wheels or interior or anything like that. And yeah, it's crazy to see it. It's like we've been dealing with it for so long, but it's another thing when the show actually, goes on broadcast, actually comes out to the marketplace. It's a really different perspective. And so some of those photos were photos that we took, fairly recently.
That's amazing. Well, one more thing, because I know that that you completed your documentary, and this story is so good. Any plans of making this a narrative film, maybe with the Duplass brothers starring as Liz Carmichael? I could totally see this as a narrative feature.
Yeah, we're talking about that right now. Really, is to figure that out, because there isn't anybody on planet Earth that has the archive and the research archive that we have at this point. You know, Nick already came into the door as the world's foremost expert on Liz Carmichael and the Dale, and we exited this project having tripled that archive or quadrupled that archive. And the more information that we know just puts us in a position in which we feel like, okay, there's so much more to tell. We can dramatize this stuff. And so we're discussing that right now.
Excellent, excellent. And before I let you go, I was checking out your filmography because you've done a lot of documentaries, but you actually have a recent narrative film called Children of the Corn.
Yeah.
that was released limited wise, or in theaters. Hey, could you talk about that? That's a prequel, and when are we going to get the rest of us going to get to see this?
Yeah, so that'll be coming out soon. We'll be announcing a big sale of that very soon. We actually shot that film from March to May in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdowns that were happening all around the world. We were one of two movies shooting in the world during this lockdown. We were filming in Australia. Another one was filming in Greenland with Netflix. And, we got ahead of it. We really did get ahead of it. My company, Cinemation, we co-financed the film and produced it with Digital Domain out of China. And so we got lucky, to the extent that our producer, Lucas Foster, was actually able to travel to China. And so he was aware of the issue on the ground there before it reached the rest of the world. And by having that foresight and having that access, that allowed us to prepare in Australia, and as a result, be able to get our film greenlit with the government. So it was a incredible labor and process of doing that right when everything was beginning and all the lockdowns were happening. But remains the first film that I was ever afraid of as a child. And I was too young to see it when it initially came out, which was 1984. I was only 4 years old. But later in the 80s, eventually, when my older brother and dad and uncles let me in the room to watch scary movies with them, this one jumped out, to me. And so when the opportunity came to remake it and modernize it and really, tell the story, because there's some really great scenes and parts of the story in the source material, Stephen King's original short story, that didn't make it into the 1984 film, that will make it into this film, that it was an opportunity I really couldn't pass up, regardless of the pandemic or not. So yeah, I'm very excited for folks to see that. That's going to be coming out very soon. And then, of course, tune in to Lady and the Dale on HBO. It's 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and it's available for early access today, episode 3 on HBO Max.
You know what? I can't wait. I already stopped Googling to make sure that I don't know the ending of it.
Yeah.
Because I want to finish up your documentary.
Yeah.
Andre, hey, thank you very much for this conversation. It was very informative, and I do have to say, thank you for making this documentary. If you didn't make this, I would have no idea who this Carmichael is. So this is terrific.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great. And, I can't wait to talk to you soon.
Yeah, let's do this again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.